I was just wanted to get a sense of where you think, or if you think at all, that there's any. We go into 24 with some stress, greater stress in OPEC plus than we went into 23. It seems the meeting in November had some stress in it, and I'm not sure. There was a sort of headlines about Africa countries, and then we lost Angola. But I think the stress between Russia and Saudi might be there. And I'm not sure
Yes.
how much longer the UAE will be content in having to carry, I don't know, 1.5 million barrels of idle capacity of five. That's a big ask.
Okay, couple of things here.
Yeah.
It was a big mistake on the part of OPEC Plus to expand and include smaller countries. Smaller countries should not exist in this coalition. There is no reason for the smaller countries to exist. There is no reason for countries where the oil is controlled by the international oil companies to exist. That's why Brazil did not join, because you have all those contracts. You don't have a clause to force the companies to cut. So even if you go back to the founders of OPEC and look at what they were saying in 1959 and 1960, they really wanted only the 5 countries. They call it the Pentagon. And they wanted the 5 countries because they are the largest countries. They want to deal only with large countries. They don't want to deal with the smaller countries. And this is a new development that brought in a lot of headache. And 2 days ago, we heard Novak talking about, oh, we need to extend OPEC plus. Well, who are the candidates to extend OPEC plus? There is none. Why join OPEC plus? What are the benefits in this case for those countries to join OPEC plus? So the issue here is Angola should not have joined in the first place. South Sudan should not exist in this coalition in the first place. So that's part of it. The other issue that we have to be mindful of is that the dispute or whatever between the UAE and Saudi Arabia is really between a company and its ministry rather than the country. So let's keep that in mind. And I know some people are going to get angry at me by saying this.
Say that again. I get confused with these separations. I mean, there's voluntary cuts that are agreed that aren't voluntary. There's what was that last one? The country that is a minister, that is a company.
I think when it comes to the dispute between the UAE and Saudi Arabia,
right,
we have to distinguish.
I wouldn't put it in those terms, because I would say it's a quota issue, not Saudi UAE. This is 20 odd countries. They've got quotas. Some have extra capacity.
Call it any way you want to.
Yeah,
all I am saying is we have a country and we have a national company, and it seems that the pressure is coming from the national oil company, not from the country.
Within the UAE, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Okay. But when it comes to Russia and Saudi Arabia, we have a long report discussing this issue in details. And I don't know if we are going to have enough time for the rest of the program to explain it, but it is an important explanation.
Please give us a summary at least.
The dispute is really, and this is going to be very big for OPEC Plus and the future for OPEC Plus. If you want to discuss OPEC Plus over time in the coming years, you have to insert gas into the equation. You have to insert LNG into the equation. You cannot just talk about oil, because we have Algeria there, we have Libya there, we have Nigeria there, we have the UAE LNG in OPEC Plus, we have Oman LNG. So what's the problem here? When Putin decided to annex Crimea and sanctions were imposed on Russia, Putin immediately realized that the West is going to impose sanctions on Russian gas or Russian oil. What he did immediately, or he did not really do it on his own, the Chinese approached him and told him, look, you are having problems. We can get your gas, we can get your oil. And once the Russians have a taste of Asia, they never looked back.
Yeah, it's a huge market of
So,
Asia. But why
correct.
do you see the combination? Why would LNG in particular
I
need to
am
be?
trying, okay,
Yes,
I'm trying to explain that and go through the process here.
please.
So in 2014, he realized that he needed to diversify away from Europe and they start sending oil to China, Indonesia, and other countries. And then for gas, they start building those pipelines. And they have those massive multi-billion-dollar agreements, et cetera, et cetera. So this started long ago. But the reason why he did it, because he realized that the United States, since 2014, has a plan to replace Russian gas in Europe. So the plan was already set in motion since Obama years. And ironically, it was set in Obama years with the help of the Republicans. So it was set in motion by that time, and they started supporting the LNG industry. Look at Trump. Trump was the chief marketing officer of the US LNG industry. Every time he went to Europe, he brought it up and told them, you don't need those pipelines. And he told Germany, you don't need them, etc. And then he imposed that sanctions on Nord Stream 2, and you cannot complete it. And he wants to sanction the companies that be participating in it, etc. And then Biden came in from the other side of the spectrum, and he took exactly the same position. Exactly the same position. He was the chief marketer of LNG. So that's where the deep state basically is at work. That when you have two sides, two opposing sides, and they are doing exactly the same thing. So Putin realized this long time ago. When he joined OPEC Plus in 2016, immediately we saw the kind of problems with Saudi Arabia. Why? Because the Saudis wanted higher prices, probably 90 plus. And he realized, look, we cannot go above 65 because this shale is going to bring massive amount of gas that will be transformed into LNG and is going to compete with my gas. And I depend heavily on gas exports. And
you mean the development of shale gas in America?
Yes. So what he wants, and the reason why, because shale wells produce massive amount of gas.
Yes.
Unlike traditional wells. And he realized that if prices will go up, then producers will drill more for oil, make their money from oil, and dump that gas on the market at any price. And we already know every time, like few times a year, we end up with negative prices in the United States for natural gas, which means that the LNG industry can have a feast on low gas prices. They will export it to the rest of the world and make a lot of money because the world prices are way higher than in the United States. So for him, it was very clear that he does not want higher prices, while the Saudis were pushing for higher prices. And therefore, from now on, you are going to see Putin basically seriously trying his best not to raise prices.
And so he wants to produce as much oil as possible. Saudi wants as much price as possible. Those two seem to be incongruous. You know, as much oil as possible versus as much price as possible.
Now, you think about it this way, and now go and look at the rest of OPEC, those who want to expand the gas industry, because they are going to have the same problem like Russia. So for Putin, his objective literally is to limit LNG exports. And ironically, Biden just did it for him last week.
Yeah, I saw that. I was going to ask you that question. That my theory is that the Europeans turn back to Russia for their gas supply because they can't, it's cheaper and it's pipeline, and they never know what America might do. Is America a reliable supplier, etc.? Your thoughts on what is happening in that dynamic, the potential of Europe to go back to Russia after all the noise is over?
For the Arabic speakers on your show,
yeah,
my weekly column tomorrow discussed this in details, and the main idea is this: yes, Biden is a Democrat. Yes, Biden wants to fight climate change. Yes, Biden wants electric vehicles. Yes, he wants solar, he wants wind, etc. But he is a political fox. He's been there for over 50 years. He knows the value of the share revolution. and he played it super well. If you look at all his actions and the way he operated in the energy world, from using the SPR in large quantities and affecting the market, to the way that he secured Europe, even at the expense of sanctions from Iran and Venezuela, to everything he's done. Now, during his reign, we had the highest oil production ever in the United States. During his reign, we have the highest natural gas production ever. And let's remember, it was Obama Biden who allowed US exports, oil exports, in 2015, December 2015. So those guys know what they are doing, and they are using this as a strategic option. So here is the conclusion of this. LNG, US LNG, has become an integral part of US foreign policy and national security. And the Biden administration knows this, and they used it to their advantage in Europe and protected the EU from collapsing or yielding to Putin's demand. But it is an election year, and his people in the Democratic Party, especially the young ones, are asking to do something about the climate. The cheapest thing he can do right now, the cheapest option, is literally to delay giving licenses to those new products. And this is funny because those young people do not know the details of what Biden did. Biden did not really hurt the LNG industry. He really helped it, and I'll tell you why. First, his decision does not affect any new projects coming online in 2024. The market is already struggling. We've seen lower prices. We've seen oversupply in the market. So
it's
by
a warm
delaying
winter.
this, correct. So by delaying this, basically, he's helping the LNG industry. Europe is in good shape. There is no problems in terms of shortages at all. And at the same time, he just delayed the licenses for new projects, which will take years to come online anyway. And it's only until the election, and just until the election. So he will go back and give licenses to those projects because he, among all the people in the government, he realizes the strategic value of LNG.
An easy win, an easy offer for the part of his tent, part of his political base. Let's just wrap up on that point, Dr. Anas. One of the records, as you mentioned, in 2023 was U.S. oil production, 13.3 million barrels, I think it was. What is the likelihood, what is the outlook for U.S. oil production in 2024? We saw in the early part of this shale boom in the 2010, 11, 12 period that shale's obviously doubling of U.S. production as those years really torpedoed OPEC's efforts to tighten the market into a higher price, although eventually it got high prices in those years, but eventually shale toppled it over. What's the likelihood here that this scale of U.S. production can continue to grow like it did last year and be a very, very big challenge to OPEC plus?
I'm going to flip the coin here and just make a couple of statements. The first one is OPEC and the Gulf states benefited greatly from the existence of shale in various ways. Because just imagine the world without adding this 9 million barrels of oil to the world and what would have happened. Imagine the political pressure. Imagine the movement of armies and problems, etc., because prices are going through the roof and we have shortage of supplies. So they did benefit in various ways. When I say various ways, for example, when Saudi tankers from Bahrain, those are the VLCC, were delivering oil to the United States, they usually go back empty. Now they are carrying US shale to Asia and they are making more money. So that's one. The number two thing is even OPEC right now and OPEC Plus are benefiting from the existence of electric vehicles, because those electric vehicles are literally lowering the stress. Remember, they keep complaining, we don't have enough investment, we don't have enough investment, we don't have enough investment. Well, those electric vehicles are lowering the stress.
They are.
In this case.
You do have 5 million barrels of OPEC plus idle supply. I mean, they're going to
Yes,
maybe have to shut it even more if they want to keep prices up. I mean, this is not without cost.
I agree with you completely, but I just want to mention the other
Saudi's in
side of the
deficit
story.
last year, right? Saudi in deficit, budget deficit, having to slow down Vision 2030 and so on.
Correct. But at least I wanted to mention those 2 points because people usually ignore them when we talk about the benefits of those.
Yes.
But to go back to shale production, the theories basically go like this. This is kind of a difficult year for shale and because many people think that shale is going to roll over and its production is going to decline. Some people are saying it's flat. The EIA think we are going to see an increase. What people do not realize is shale can fire up within 2 months, which means that you give me a price above $80 for WTI, and within 2 months I can add more. So unlike the conventional, and you and I discussed this on previous shows, is that the time frame basically is completely different in this case. So we can make all kind of predictions about US shale, but if prices increase above 80 for WTI, expect an increase within a couple of months, and that will change the whole equation. But this is not.
What
the
about
issue.
decline? What about some forecast that the new consolidation of the shale patch with the Exxon and Chevron buying the big players in the Permian, that they might even pull back from investing in maintaining production?
The issue, if you look at all the periods of merger and acquisitions throughout history in the oil industry, what do you see? That companies get busy consolidating after the merger, and they don't focus on increasing production much. So most of the decrease will not happen because of a decision to decrease production. It's more being busy for a year or two, because those legal issues are so big, and on the ground, basically, to consolidate is so tough. So the decrease happens because of the process more than the intention in this case. So if there is a decrease in 2023, it will be mostly because of those mergers, not because of the intention to reduce production. I would like to mention 2 points here. If you look at last year, most of the increase in US liquids production came from NGLs, not from, we've seen some, of course, 1 million barrel increase in crude, but that was near most of the expectations. But what was not expected is 300,000 barrels of liquids. And here is the other issue that I need to learn because I'm still kind of completely ignorant on this side. We got 400,000 barrels increase in biofuel. That was one of the biggest surprises in the US. This is one of the biggest surprises of 2023. All of a sudden, liquids, just 1.7 million barrels of increase in liquids, 400 of it is biofuel. And when it comes to biofuel, most of oil analysts basically do not know much about the agricultural sector and how the biofuel sector work. And that's why I mentioned earlier that it was the year of forecast failures. One of the reasons for the forecast failures, and I'm not mentioning any excuses here, I'm just taking lessons from the failure, that people missed on biofuel.
What are we going to miss on in 2024 as our closing thought? Last year, clearly the meetings in IE Week in London and elsewhere was, this is the year of two halves. China's going to come back bionic in the second half, etc. What forecast do you currently see that don't smell the right mustard? So what's your sense of the mistakes that are forecasting at the moment, perhaps?
Of course, one issue is we don't know how Biden is going to work out the SPR. I mean, this is kind of unknown thing if he's going to use the strategic petroleum reserves. And
even though it is relatively low, I mean, they never refilled it in the first place.
Correct, but they can go for 30 million easily,
right,
without any problems. And they can do it in August because that's where the highest or the peak of the summer to lower gasoline prices. Whether they lower it or not, it doesn't matter. But the act is really what matters to his people. And the other issue is, I think there is
But gasoline
more.
at the moment is still okay, right? $3 average, more or less. I mean, it seems in a sweet
Yes,
spot.
yes, yes. And the other issue that kind of, I think this is more to the upside, that the failure of green policies, the slowdown in electric vehicle sales, might surprise on the upside, because all the forecasts are counting for a large number of EVs. All the forecasts are counting for the success of the green policies, and this is not materializing fully on the ground. So we might get, if we get kind of a surprise on the upside, it will be because of the failure of some of the green policies.
Can China's sort of the bearish expectation from China, is that valid? Do you think that's maybe a misreading there? What's your thoughts on China?
Here is, of course, we missed on China in the first quarter. That's what messed up our forecast in the first place. But here is an information that I think is very important. If you look at China's oil demand in 2022 and 2023, you see a major decline during the lockdowns, and then a major upward increase in consumption when they opened up in early 2023. The first lesson we learned is this: when you have lockdowns and you open up, most of the increase is really in luxury demand, not in the basics. And this is an important lesson. So where we see most of the increase in jet fuel, which means travel, we did not see it. We've seen some increase in gasoline and diesel, but not much. Most of the increase, basically 60% increase in jet fuel. But if you look at naphtha and LPG, we did not see that much decrease during the lockdown. And then you look at the demand in 2023, it went through the roof. What that telling us? What is the industry that was booming in China in 2023? It's the manufacturing of electric vehicles. And what happened here is, where we use naphtha, where we use LPG in the petrochemical sector, which means that the making of electric vehicles required massive amount of oil. So China, or the increase in the number of electric vehicles in China, this is not the number of manufactured. This is how many cars Chinese bought, because they manufactured way more because they were exporting them. But the Chinese bought 9.5 million electric vehicles in 2023. If you want to calculate the impact of that on the oil demand, it is about 270,000 barrels a day. That's it. The increase in naphtha and LPG is more than 1 million barrels a day.
So just to make those cars is a huge oil consumption exercise.
Right. So the net is smaller than what electric vehicle supporters think. So the net becomes important, and we are not looking at the other things. We are just talking about the body. But we published a report last week, very interesting report on EVs, and some of the conclusions are like this. If you look at Norway, which is on per capita basis is #1 in the world, and you look at gasoline and diesel consumption and gasoline is 60% declined. The decline is 60% of what it should be in terms of replacement. So why? Then we've seen studies showing that the electric vehicles are driven less than ICE vehicles. There are many explanations there. We don't have time to go through that. But what is the most important point here is, and this is kind of what's funny, since 2015-16, when the boom started in electric vehicles until today, we used about 60 million barrels of oil just for tire replacement, for unusual tire replacement, because of the heavy weight of electric vehicles. So we have an additional increase in demand by 60 million barrels just because of the EVs.
Wow. I mean, it is interesting, as you say, that all of these new data points, as you get into the granular, as you call it, net gain or net loss with the move to EVs, the sort of net carbon gain or net carbon loss, will be one to clearly watch. Just to wrap up, Dr. Anas, because we're way over time, the ultimate sort of outlook for the year ahead, your oil price forecast. Last year we saw Brent more or less around $80. Obviously WTI a few dollars back from that. Where do you see prices on the average through 24?
Although we missed last year, we were the second best, by the way. Number one was Ed Morris at Citi. He got it very close, and we were second to him. For this year, we are looking at something in the high 70s as an average. It is very hard to
on Brent,
see.
that is
correct. So high 70s as an average. It is very hard to see $100 oil this year unless we have a major political event that affect capacity. So we have to see a major reduction in capacity to see that $100 oil. At the same time, it seems that the Saudis and the Russians have to settle on a range that is acceptable to both, because the Russians, it seems that they are really, I mean, for them, this LNG issue, US LNG is the target right now.
Interesting. US LNG is the target. Dr. Anas Alhajji, Managing Partner, Energy Outlook Advisors, the best in the business. Thank you so much for joining us on Halftime Talk this week.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.